Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of It's Crystal Clear, a show that's designed to tell your money where to go instead of always wondering where it went. My name is Felicia Young, and I am so glad that you all are here with me another week. Wow. So, if you have been rocking with me this whole time, there are several things that should be true about your life right now. One, you're living by the 10, 10, and 80 rule, where the first 10% of your before tax income you tithe, where you're showing God that you trust Him to make provisions for you throughout your life by giving Him a dime off of every single dollar that you earn. You're living with an open hand. Where the second 10% of your before tax income, you're saving. You make sure that your house note is paid. You make sure that your car note is paid. You make sure that your cell phone bill is paid. But before you start making sure all those places are paid, you need to make sure that you are paid first. What sense does it make for you to make every single person rich, every single company rich but yourself? I want you to save. And the last 80% of your income you're to live off of. And in order to do that, you have been reviewing your bank statements every single month to see where you've been spending your money. You've been looking to see where you can cut back, and you've been looking to see where you can make adjustments. You've cut or reduced your latte factors, yes, and you stopped buying stuff just to be buying stuff. And you're using the snowball method to pay off those credit card bills and those personal loans. You make time to budget your money every week. And if you got real fancy, you made time to budget your money every day. You're boldly telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. You're making time to save. How can you plan for a fabulous future if you don't have the money to pay for it? The choices that you make today, it determines how you're going to live tomorrow. Take a minute to imagine. If you had the mindset that you do today, 5 years ago, what would your life look like right now? What kind of home would you have? What would you be driving? Would your car be paid off by now? Would you have 5 or 6 figures in an investment account? Would you have traveled to places you could only dream about? Imagine, how would your life be much different right now if the choices you made back then had the same mindset? I know you've been thinking about that. So you have to choose to use that same energy to start saving now. So when you look back in 5 years, you'll be so glad that you started. So since you've been rocking with me, your financial life should have improved. Debt should have been eliminated. And you should be enjoying life without the stress of maxed out cards and disconnect notices staring you in the face. You should be able to set goals now and budget money to be able to afford to pay for them. You should be able to afford that new car you've been wanting instead of having to drive the one that's always breaking down on you. You should be able to afford to buy that new house you've been wanting that has everything that you want in it, and you didn't have to settle. You should be able to simply breathe and live a life that's completely different than the one that you had this time last year. How does that feel? So if you haven't made time to think about it just yet, I want you to do that. I want you to just sit. I want you to just think. And I want you to thank God for allowing you to be in this position now. And thank Him for allowing your life to continue to improve every single day. Now, while you're thinking about that and while you're feeling great, I want you to say something out loud. Never again will I be broke financially. It's time to cancel the curse. That just happens to be the title of today's lesson. Never again will I be broke financially. I am breaking the curse. A few weeks ago, I had the chance to talk to a married couple. They've been using the lessons from It's Crystal Clear for several months. We were doing a check-in to see how they were doing with setting and hitting their goals, just making sure that they were doing the things that they needed to do. When they came to meet with me, they brought their son and his new wife with them. So we all sat down. Each one of the families had their folders with their bank statements. They had bank statements, spreadsheets, and just other documents. But before we got started reviewing, the dad started talking. He said that he and his wife have been married for 32 years, and never in all that time did they make time to sit and review bills. They never planned their week by telling their money where it was going. He said their normal routine was for his wife to just simply fuss the whole time that she was making payments on those bills. Now, both of them carelessly spent, so she really was fussing at both of them. When she saw how much credit card bills they were paying at each month, he knew he was in for it. He said, but now they sit down at their kitchen table on Sunday afternoons and they go through their bills together. And there's no arguing because the items on the bills are no longer surprises. They had already discussed and they already planned to spend everything that they bought. He said there was so much peace in their home that they hadn't had before. He said now he looks forward to that time with his wife. He said it wasn't that they were sitting and paying bills, they were actually making time to continuously plan for their future together. He said it actually ignited a spark in their relationship that had left years ago. He said he brought his son and his daughter in law to the meeting because he wanted the family curse to end. So I looked like, okay, what does that mean? He said when he was younger, money was not positively discussed in their household. He remembers his parents arguing all the time over money, or better yet, the lack of money. He remembers coming home from school and the lights would be disconnected and having to go to school with wrinkled clothes because they didn't have the electricity to iron anything. Or he would come home and the water would be cut off and having to go to school a little smelly because they didn't have any water to bathe. He remembers sneaking his lunch that he got from the free food program at school into his backpack so that he can have something to eat at night. He said because sometimes they simply didn't have a lot of food at home to feed everyone at the same time. He said he remembers the nights that he just couldn't sleep because all he could hear were his parents arguing so loud about who overspent money again. He remembers the day when his parents sat him and his sisters down and they told them that they were getting a divorce. The fallout from that caused the financial situation for both parents to get worse. There were now two households that money had to be spread between. He said when he got home from school one day, the lights were off once again. He said he couldn't take it. He just simply went and sat outside and he started daydreaming. He said at that moment he promised himself that he would never live like his mom and dad again. He would make so much money that he would buy whatever he wanted. He said when he grew up, he did just that. He started making really good money. But the thing was, he spent every single dime on it. He bought whatever he wanted. He used all of his cash. He used all of his credit cards. He wined and dined his girlfriend. He bought her all these lavish gifts, the best clothes. He took her on a fancy trip to her favorite city where he planned a surprise proposal. They had a lavish wedding, a Caribbean island destination wedding with over 200 guests. He said he bought them a beautiful home. They had gorgeous furniture. They had two nice luxury cars. And if you took a picture of their life, it would look like a masterpiece. The ideal life, marriage goals. But the reality was they were living a nightmare. So if you looked at their bank statement, you would see how low they had in the accounts. They had charges for bounce checks. They had insufficient funds. They had overdraft fees, but the pages of purchases, it was just stuff. If you looked at their credit card statement, you would see maxed out accounts. You would see minimum balances paid, uh, late payments, pages of purchases. If you look through their cell phone call logs, you will see missed calls from debt collectors trying to get the money that's owed to them. If you look through their mail, you will see piles and piles and piles of unopened bills. If you were a fly on the wall in their house, you would hear hours of screaming and yelling and arguing over money, little green slips of paper. He said earlier this year he overheard his coworker talking about the latte factor and not going out for lunch as often as she could so she could save up money for a trip that she wanted to take. A few months later, he saw the coworker posting pictures from their vacation. And when she returned to work, she wasn't stressing to work overtime to pay for the bills from that trip. He was curious. He knew how much she made. So he asked her, "What's up?" She told him about the It's Crystal Clear podcast and how her mindset changed once she started applying the lessons that she was learning to her life. She spent her money on whatever she wanted to spend it on. She knew the type of life that she wanted to live, and she made sure what she spent her money on supported that lifestyle. The coworker said once she got a taste of that type of freedom, she wanted more of it. She told him that she started telling her money where to go instead of always wondering where it went. She told him she would never be broke again since she got a taste of that life. So the excitement that she had while she was sharing with him made him want the same for his household. So later that day, he went home and he told his wife about the conversation with the coworker. And they decided they wanted to tell their money where to go to. So they started to review their bank statements. They started to develop budgets. They used the snowball method to eliminate that latte factor, pay off those loans, pay off down those credit cards, and they stopped arguing and started talking about their life. He said the atmosphere in their house changed drastically. They enjoyed being around each other a lot more. Didn't sit in the driveway, dreading to go inside the house to face each other. He said they really enjoyed their days off. Their marriage was simply better. He said that one day they were at their son's and daughter-in-law house, and they could feel there was a lot of tension in the air. Their daughter-in-law had puffy eyes, and she kind of stayed isolated in the living room. Their son, he was huffing and puffing all around the house, kind of mumbling to himself. So the husband and the wife, they definitely recognized those moves. They definitely recognized those attitudes. So they pulled both of them together to have a family discussion. Come to find out, the son and the daughter in law were having big time financial problems. The daughter in law's hours at work were reduced. Their house note was behind. Their utility bills kept getting cut off every other month or so. They got a few payday loans to try to get them through. They swiped their cards to help float the bills. Now, the son, he made pretty good money, and he felt like he still deserved to live. He still went out and hung out with his boys on the weekends, and it did cost money, a lot of money. He still bought clothes, he still bought shoes, which cost money. He still ate where he wanted, which was in nice restaurants with high tabs. He did see that the family finances were hemorrhaging. He did notice that his marriage was failing, and he kind of didn't feel like fighting for his marriage or their poor lifestyle anymore. And he said that divorce was a very frequent conversation. Immediately, his dad had flashbacks of his childhood and the constant fights that his parents had about money. He remembered that that was the cause of his parents' divorce. He had flashbacks of his own marriage and all of the screaming and yelling behind little green slips of paper and drowning in debt. Now he's watching his son's marriage following the same path. 3 generations of failing marriages, all behind the mismanagement of money. He decided that he was going to take a stand and break the curse of poverty in his family. So he said the family made time to talk and be completely transparent about their struggles, transparent about the challenges. And they had to set goals. They had to talk about their dreams. They had to discuss their desires and what drastic steps they had to take in order to turn that thing completely around. So, as a family, they made time to get together every single week. They made family meals and they took time to go over all the bills, all the bank statements, all the notes, all the loans, all the credit cards. The son and daughter in law listed their debt from the smallest to the largest so they can apply the snowball method to zero out their balances. They were able to see exactly what they owed and who they owed it to. And they became committed to going extreme to wipe that debt out. The daughter in law decided to find another job that paid more and had a consistent salary. The son, he didn't stop hanging out with his friends, but he cut back quite a bit of what he spent whenever he did go out with them. And he was very conscious not to spend a lot of money. So after a few months of them telling their money where to go, they could finally see a light at the end of the tunnel. They had caught up on their house note. They had paid their bills on time every single month. They paid off two of their credit cards. That was awesome. And they were able to start seeing their savings account start to build. Now, recently, they had their weekly get together, and the son and the daughter in law were reviewing their finances with their parents. They still had a few credit card bills that they had to pay off, but it wasn't as much as it was before. And they still had a few personal loans to get rid of as well. But all the payments were caught up. The parents told them how proud they were. They were so happy for their progress, and because of their commitment to become debt free, they would receive a gift. So the parents looked at each other and they slid their kids an envelope. So inside the envelope was a check made payable to both of them. It was a substantial amount to help them with their progress. So because the parents started telling their money where to go, they were able to adjust just one goal, and they made that happen. What they decided to do was to start saving a particular amount of money every single pay period to give as a gift to their son and daughter in law to help them break that curse. So I was given permission to share that story with you because many of your families are plagued with that same cycle of generational poverty and mismanagement of money. Your grandparents, they did the best they could. They worked from sun up to sundown. They used every single dime that they earned just to try to make ends meet, but it just simply wasn't enough. Your parents, they just didn't know. How do you strategically plan how to use your money to pay for now and to use your money to pay for later if you weren't taught? They just didn't know. And what they did have, it just wasn't enough. You, you're so busy being busy, trying to keep up with life, the rising cost of groceries, the rising cost of gas, the rising cost of utilities, the rising cost of living. It forces you to be so busy, overworking 2 and 3 jobs, earning just enough to keep living paycheck to paycheck. It doesn't seem fair. And it seems like you just can't get enough. But I want you to be the one who breaks the curse. Now, you have spent months watching this podcast, taking the steps needed to pay down credit cards, being intentional about paying your notes on time. You purposely directing 10% of your before tax income to save money. You're making time to do it. It's being done. And I want you to declare that never again will your family be financially broke. Never again will your family live paycheck to paycheck. Never again will you buy stuff just to buy stuff. Never again will you book a cruise and your house note is behind. Never again will you get your paycheck and not tithe. Never again will you get your paycheck and not pay yourself first. Never again will you pay bills late. Never again will you go out a week without making time to budget. Never again will you make a purchase without it being thought out first. Never again will you forget to set goals and map out a plan to achieve them. Never again will you pay late fees and insufficient fund fees. Never again will you bounce a check or float a check. Never again will you buy something beyond your means just to impress people who are not paying that bill. Never again will you think you're not worth a life full of peace, hope, prosperity, wealth, grace, and mercy. Never again will you take the provisions that God gave you and waste it. Never again will you be ungrateful. taking God's blessings for granted. Never again will you live a life that is beneath what God created you to have. Never again will you be broke. Today, you will break that curse. You really worked hard over the past few months, and I do not want you to go back to how you were when you started this process. And you shouldn't want to go back to how you were when you started this process. Y'all, God does not want you going back to how you were. Otherwise, He wouldn't have made a way for you to start this process. You're here with this crystal clear helping you. Today, the curse is broken. Never again will you be broke. So that ends today's episode. And I hope that it was a blessing to you. If so, I want you to bless others. You know them. Send this video to them. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, and we're on Apple. So I want to thank, as always, my behind the scenes team for doing the thing to make sure that I can be seen by you every single week. And I want to thank each of you for taking time to be with me every single week. And remember, I want you to dream big. I want you to stay focused, and I want you to live your best life within budget. I will see you next time on It's Crystal Clear.